Hello, today I am here to talk about the second half of my September reading. I didn't feel like things had gone that well with my reading, but actually I've still got 4 books to speak to you about, so let's get straight into it. I started this half of the month with a reread for me, which was The Grace Keepers by Kirsty Logan. Now the main reason I picked this up, it was kind of twofold, to be honest. Predominantly I wanted to pick it up for research purposes because there is a circus in here which is a kind of magically different world circus, which is kind of inspiration for the novel that I'm going to be writing soon. But also I wanted to pick it up again because I believe that her new book The Gloaming is set in a similar world, or the same world to this one, I want to say. So I wanted to refresh myself in that sense anyway. I also gave this 5 stars when I read it a few years ago. And it's a book that sadly really didn't stick with me. So I kind of went back and knocked it down to 4 stars. And I still stand by that 4-star rating, but it definitely is going to stick with me a lot more after this second reading. So this is a book which is set in an alternative world, a future world effectively, where the earth has kind of been taken over by the sea and there's not that much land. So the people who live on land are the really rich people, the people who can afford to live on this minimal land, and everybody else lives in boats. And we predominantly follow a boat which is a circus boat, which moves around and entertains the people on land. And we follow a girl called North in that circus boat, and she has an act with a bear. It's her and her bear on front there, and we follow her, and she has a secret that she's hiding from the circus. And we also follow a girl called Callanish, who is a gracekeeper, which is effectively somebody who, she lives on land but she's kind of been shunned from society. We don't know why to start with, it does unravel. But she is a gracekeeper, so she gets these birds that she has to keep in cages called graces, and she basically has to put them out to sea, and they are effectively markers of the dead. She can't look after them, she can't feed them or anything like that. She has to put them out to die, and once they have died, the dead people are considered at rest. This basically, it follows a lot of different perspectives, but it predominantly looks at the stories of these 2 girls and how they interact with the world and how they come together. It's a really fantastic book, but it's something that stands up really well to a reread, and I think you get much more out of it on a reread. What I would say is that Kirsty Logan's language in this book is fantastically beautiful, and it's quite a disconcerting world that she's describing, and everything's quite uncomfortable and unpleasant, and there are nasty things going on, and you can tell that everything's not quite as it should be, but yet it's described in these really poetic and beautiful ways that kind of are almost like waves washing over you and kind of deceiving you and making you look away from the nasty stuff. I think it's fantastically written, and as I say, I'm really glad to have revisited it. I have still stuck with my 4-star rating, but I think that's more a reflection of my rating system being a bit harsher now. But it's definitely a book that I will return to time and again. I think it's really beautiful. And for my Faber Academy course, we have got a list of writing books, and this is one of them, Writing from the Inside Out by Dennis Palumbo. This is the first one that I've picked up, and I have to say, it was fine. I think the thing is, I've read so many books like this now that, you know, it kind of didn't tell me anything new. Basically, Dennis Palumbo used to be a writer in the film scene. He used to write scripts and he used to work on television and stuff. He then left that career and has become a therapist, and he works with quite a lot of writers. In this book, he writes about what he has learned about the sort of psyche and the psychological processes of writers, from both his experience in the writing world himself and also from his experience working with these writer clients. As I say, it didn't really teach me anything. It was fine. I think what's good about this is that it's in very short little sections. So each section is like 4 pages. So it's a good one to kind of pick up now and again. But yeah, I would say there are much better books that probably do the same thing. I would certainly say that Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott is a better version of this. Obviously, she doesn't have the professional aspect of being a therapist, but she does write about sort of her own psychological processes, and I think she says everything that Dennis Palumbo says. He actually does have a chapter where he recommends writing books, and he mentions Bird by Bird. Yeah, it was fine. I'm glad I read it. I always enjoy reading writing books just to give myself a little boost, but yeah, I could have done without it and not really missed out on any information. Then I read The 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield. This was for Katie's read-along, which was over 2 weeks. I read this in the first week because I rush ahead of things. I didn't actually participate in the readathon because I'm rubbish at things like that, but I did really enjoy listening to everybody speak about this book. It's about a girl who works as a biographer, and she lives in her dad's bookshop, and she just surrounds herself in books. She then one day gets a letter from a fictionalised writer in this world who's really successful and has best-selling novels, but she's kind of an author that nobody really knows the truth about her. Nobody knows who she is or what her history is. So it's kind of a big deal that she's writing to this girl to ask her to write her biography for her. And we go from there, and it's kind of a bit of a thriller. You're trying to work out what's going on, and there are sort of ghostly elements and things like that. Now, I have to say, I'm sorry, Katie, I hated this book. I had to take a step back from it because I think I was so annoyed by it that I could have just ranted about this. But I feel like I've had enough distance now that I'm not annoyed anymore. Also, from reading people's chats on the discussion, it's absolutely a personal thing. Everybody else seemed to really love it, but there are a few things that just meant that me and this book were not destined to get along. For one, I would say this book is very much like a Carlos Ruiz Zafón or a Sarah Waters. So if the two authors had a book baby, this would be the book baby. It absolutely is just like, it's pretty much the spirit of Ruiz Zafón with a little bit of Fingersmith thrown in there for good measure. Both of those are authors that I've never been able to get along with. So that wasn't a good mix of things for me to go into this book feeling. And it's going to be difficult to talk about this without giving spoilers because it is very much twisty and turny and spoilery. But I think I can say without spoiling much that there is a small subplot which involves incest in here, and incest is one of those things that I just can't get along with in books. It's not like I'm squeamish about it, I don't care about that, but it's just, I think because it's obviously it happens, but it's quite a difficult thing to make believable, especially in a fictional world, and I never find it believable. I just think it adds an element of disbelief, and it just takes me out of the story, and I just can't get behind it. I also found that the big reveal at the end of this book was kind of ludicrous. I'm not gonna lie, it just did not fit with me. It was kind of a bit like being like, and then it was all a dream. Like, it's not like that. I'm not spoiling it by saying that, but it was almost, to me it read almost as that convenient and like, oh of course that's what it was, you know. It was just a bit silly, and I felt as well, I mean, I might feel differently if I reread this, and there probably are hints and bits in there, and even thinking back on it, I can think there are hints and bits that sort of do point you towards the ultimate mystery reveal, but there are also definite points in here that purposefully lead you down a wrong path just so that the ending is a surprise. And I don't think that's very skillful. The ending just did not work for me at all. Obviously I had these issues with it at the start, and I have to say the middle did pick up for me, but as soon as the ending happened, I was so annoyed I wanted to give this 2 stars. I have since upped that to 3 stars because I thought it was kind of harsh, but yeah, I really disliked this book. Yeah, let's just not talk about it anymore, not for me. Then I finished on a much higher note, which was Shades of Grey by Jasper Fforde. This is a book that's been on my shelf for a while, and it's one of those books that I just haven't gotten around to picking up. Jasper Fforde, to be honest, is one of those books who's been on my radar for a while, but again, I've just never gotten around to picking him up. I am so glad I read this. Basically, this is a satire which is set 100 years in the future, and it looks at a world in which it's effectively a kind of dystopian utopia, where basically social class and social standing are all based on your colour perception. So effectively the world has been changed so that certain people only see certain colours. So you have greys, who are the poor working class people who are kind of shunned to the side and have to serve all the other colours, and then you have reds, your blues, and then your crossover colours like your purples. Such a clever world, and it's so well put together. Basically this is just hilarious, and yet it manages to hit so many pressing and important issues on the head. It just does. Especially the fact that, you know, people are born into their colour. So yes, there is specific breeding to make certain family colours stronger or to improve the heritage of that family, but effectively people are born into their colour. You know, it's an issue that they have no choice in. It's just a thing that they can or can't do, and it very much kind of makes a joke of the fact that these people are being persecuted for something that they have no control over, but in making that joke, it makes the very true point about the fact that people who are born in a different race, for instance, are persecuted because they are born into something that they have absolutely no say in, and it just really highlights how ludicrous that situation is, and it's so good. I don't normally gravitate towards funny books. In fact, I can't remember the last time I read a book that made me laugh out loud. This book really made me laugh out loud, but it was so hard-hitting at the same time. I would highly recommend this if you like things like A Brave New World and 1984. It is looking at exactly the same themes but doing it in a comic way, which just highlights the severity of the issues, and I think it's fantastic. I didn't realise either that there is meant to be 2 more coming in this series. I don't think they're out yet, but I would definitely pick them up. It's fantastic, and I enjoyed every second of it. That is all the books I read this half of the month. Please let me know down below your thoughts on any of these and what you have been reading, and I will see you next time. Bye!